Hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good.
Let me make sure my phone is not going to fall down. Okay,
Thanks for having me.
sure. It's good to talk to you.
Good to
Um,
talk to you.
I'm going to apologize in advance for this one chasing her tail in the background. Just started right as I turned the phone on. So why don't you get us started by telling us who you are, where you are, and what you do?
Sure. So, Doug Hacker. I am in Vermont, in southern Vermont, in Manchester, the Manchester area, near Stratton Mountain. For those who do skiing, I run a house concert series here in Vermont that we've been running. My wife and I and my family have been running for about nine years now. We started in 2011. We do about a show a month. We've done about 135 shows in those 9 years, all mostly at our house, sometimes at other places, but probably over 100 of those in our house. First started in Williamstown, Massachusetts, in the Berkshires. Williamstown being where Billsville came from. That was
Ah,
Billsville was a nickname for Williamstown. And we moved up to Vermont in about 2015, even though we've been working in Vermont and going to school in Vermont for decades. So I'm not sure why it took us so long to move here, but that's where we are now.
and how far apart are you now from where the shows used to be?
They're about an hour, so it's about an hour south. Williamstown is about an hour south. So we still get people who come up and drive that hour from time to time. So we still retain some of the same, concert goers, but by and large, it's a new crowd up here.
That's fantastic. And how did you initially connect with the new people in your community? You did have some ties to that community already, sounds like.
Yeah, I think, in the beginning we did a few shows at sort of not our house, so a little more public facing shows, not that they're private, but we're not out hanging signs or anything. So
Sure.
in the beginning we did some shows at a couple inns and a few other spots just to get the name and the word out there with already established folks in the community. We had some big supporters who actually had come to Williamstown who lived up here, so it wasn't a complete shot in the dark to get started up here.
Sure. Can you tell me, if I could put you on the spot, what have been a couple of your most favorite shows that you've hosted
Yeah,
out of those 100, however many?
I usually say the last one was my favorite, which is always true. So for me, there are really so many. I'm kind of joking there. Certainly, His Golden Messenger came up last year and did a solo show with Aaron Ray opening. That was sort of special. We sold that one out so quickly that they asked us to do a second show. So we did two shows in one night, which was great. And as you requested, I've got my concert merch on here. This is my not really His Golden Messenger shirt, but that's my Hiss merch. That was a fantastic show. We did a Rachel and Vilray show that people just freaked out about for obvious reasons a couple years ago. This year has just been incredible, really, until we stopped. We started the year with Devil Makes Three, which was a secret show for some obvious reasons. They've got a huge following, but
Sure.
we've known some of those folks forever. Morgan Eve, obviously from Brown Bird, Devil Makes Three now. So we did Devil Makes Three, and then within 1 week we did Hawktail, John Paul White, and Caroline Rose, and those were the last three.
Those all in the same week?
Hawktail was a Saturday, John Paul White was the next Friday, and Caroline Rose was the Sunday. So yes,
Incredible.
so all in the same week. So that was a pretty great start of the year. And then, as I like to say, the next show we had, the next two shows that we had booked, which are not booked anymore. Courtney Marie Andrews was scheduled to be here on Wednesday, and then I can say it now and be sad that Blake Mills was going to come in June.
Oh,
So I don't think people even knew that Blake had planned on being out on the road. I think they're trying to reschedule that. But
what a bummer. I
yeah,
feel like every day I'm getting calendar reminders popping up telling me what show I'm supposed to be at or hosting. And man, what a bummer.
yeah, Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I'm a huge John Paul White fan. I probably listen to him in my house more than any of my other records. And I was very envious when you guys had him. I was living vicariously through your photos.
That show, I think that show was really special for a lot of reasons. Obviously, John Paul's been doing it for a long time, but as he makes it clear, when he was here, he doesn't want to go play, as he said, a bar in Dallas. That's not something he's interested in anymore in his career. He wants to be in front of crowds that he can connect with, who pay attention and listen, and that's exactly what was going on here. It was, we booked that show out of thin air. He had already had his tour scheduled, and he had a Friday night open or a Saturday night open. And I usually when that happens, and you see that on someone's schedule, they've got press or a private show or something. And I sent an email to his booking agent sort of saying, I doubt this can happen, but he's at least in driving distance. And, John Paul runs a small label. Aaron Ray's on that label. Nicole Atkins is on that label. I think that just rang a bell with him. So he did it. He drove like 5 hours here to make the show, and it was really at the end of things, and it was really a fantastic night.
Amazing. That must have been so incredibly special.
Yeah.
Glad you got to do that, especially because that was one of his last shows before all this had to stop, right?
I think he might have done 2 or 3 more. He did a show in Saratoga at Cafe Lena, and they had like 50%, not occupancy. They only let 50% of the people in the room because it was starting to get crazy. I think he did 3 shows after ours. Yeah.
Wow. Well, if we could switch gears a little bit, tell me what you're doing to pass the time in these current circumstances. What's keeping you busy or not busy?
Yard work. Yeah. Yeah. We live in Vermont. We've got everyone up here has a decent sized lot, but what that means is the forest is always trying to take over. So the trees try to come in and attack you, and the bushes and the weeds and the leaves. So this time of year, everybody else probably has spring. It's feeling like, like just starting to have, buds and things. So we're doing, literally yard work. That's what I spend most of my time doing.
I talked to 2 other people in Vermont during these chats so far. I talked to Kat Wright last week, and to Brian Carroll from Redline Roots. And it sounded like Brian was keeping pretty busy too. He does maple shearing, or I don't even know what the terms are, but
yeah, Brian and Kat are both friends. Kat's been here and played, and Brian I've known for quite some time through various different connections, and we got to hang out at a festival here called the Green Mountain Bluegrass and Roots Festival, which just got started a couple of years ago. Brian's a key player there on the social media side and stuff. So yeah, it's so everyone in Vermont knows everyone anyway. That's what we like to say. And certainly everyone who's involved in music in any serious capacity probably knows everyone.
Sure. I love how small the music community is in general, but it's cool too to see, New England, and then within New England, there's like the Providence people and the Vermont people. And I love how we're all connected.
Yeah. I used to say, anything from like DC all the way to Portland, Maine, everybody knew each other. And I think for me, that's probably drifted down to North Carolina now a little bit more. We've had a few more sort of bluegrass leaning bands, a lot of North Carolina presence, which is fantastic.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
What have you been listening to during all of this?
Not much. I don't know. I'm sort of, in times like these, I'm not out there sort of experimenting musically. I sort of get stuck on something and just listen to it over and over and over.
That's me all the time.
Yeah. So it's not like I'm going to come here and say, oh, I've been listening to these 20 new things that you should listen to. I've been listening to the Waxahachie record on like constant repeat. Like my wife told me I needed to stop at one point. So, I just put my headphones on and listen to it anyway. And I go back to the people that have been here because they feel comfortable, and, Courtney Marie Andrews a lot, as I mentioned, and obviously His Golden Messenger is always my sort of go-to listen. certainly I listen to other stuff, but really I'm just something about the familiarity of people makes a big difference. So.
Yeah, and those artists you've all mentioned are, I think, particularly comforting, even probably if you don't know them. It's like getting a hug from a friend listening to them.
Yeah, the Waxahachie record, as soon as I heard the first song, I went, "Oh, I'm being targeted by this record." This is like right off, right, sort of right up my alley. And yeah, I listened to that a lot.
I see Stephen has joined us in the comments here. He says, take off your shirt, but I don't think he was here to see what shirt you're wearing. Could you show your shirt again?
Oh, sure, Steven. Here, it's my his shirt.
Perfect.
Steve's a longtime friend. Here's a good story about Steve, and we'll just tell musical stories, right?
Let's do it.
So, Spirit Family Reunion had played for us. They were one of the first bands who played for us in Williamstown. And we met them literally via my next door neighbor, who was a school teacher, who said to me, "Oh, one of my former students is in a band. You should host them," which is sort of like the kiss of death, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh, this is going to go poorly. But that former student turned out to be Maggie. And Spirit was one of the first bands who played for us. They played multiple times. At one point, a couple summers ago, the Steven story is my son was on a sort of outdoor adventure program and needed an older male, I almost choked when I said it, role model to hang out with him for a weekend. So we invited Steven to do that, and he did. He came up from the city right before I think he moved to North Carolina. He came up, hung out with my son in the woods for a weekend, got sloppy dirty, and hi, Steven, we love you.
That's perfect. He is. He's a role model for the children. That's what I think of when I think of Stephen.
Me too.
That's fantastic. For anybody who's watching now that knows Stephen, we did talk a couple weeks ago, and I think that video is definitely up on YouTube already, so you can go check that out if you'd like to hear what Stephen's up to right now. Spoiler alert, he's baking a lot of bread. All right, so have you gotten to listen to any live streams? Are you into that at all?
So it's like I said, I want to be honest, like, no, not much. For the same sort of reason I was talking about before, there's something I'm trying to understand about, I've looked at a little, how does it all, and I'm fascinated by trying to move the business model forward at this time. That's where I spend much of my time thinking. I still don't understand exactly how it's going to work for everyone. I want it to, obviously. I like them better when they're sort of intimate and not planned, and there's a lot of interaction, which is actually hard to do. Like I said, I think Courtney Marie has done a couple great ones, including one of the first ones I saw with her and Tallest Man on Earth out in the Catskills, which was just fantastic, because it just felt like friends hanging out and playing music as opposed to sort of like, here's the show, because I think as important as live streams need to be, it doesn't feel like, to me, like, here's the show and that's going to exactly be right. So I think the sort of interactivity model makes sense, sort of maybe adding a Q&A element so that it feels real makes sense, because, I mean, let's face it, a digital performance is not really a replacement for a live event.
It's a different thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different thing. So I just don't want a digital version of the other thing. So I'd like it to be a little bit different, and I'm just not sure how it works. I'm not sure it's my place to figure that out. We'd like to do that, but I think the artists tend to be working through that themselves. I see David Wax is here. They're one band who's always on top of, like, let's try it this way, let's do it. I think they've got some of that dialed in. So it'll be interesting to see where all that goes. But I have not really been spending tons of my time doing that, although I have been, pushing money out at people, which I think is the important thing to do for the fan base.
Yeah, me too. I did talk to Suze. I think that was last week. The weeks are starting to run together a little bit, but that video will be on YouTube shortly. Yeah, I agree. It is really interesting to watch people figuring it out in real time. I think the sociology of all of this is really interesting. It's going to be interesting to look back on it once we're through to whatever normal looks like on the other side.
And I think I did see one that I really related to. There's a guy, he's a Canadian musician, Dan Mangan. I don't think everyone knows Dan, but he's just incredible. He's huge in Canada, one of those people. He played our house back in 2000. He was our second house concert ever.
Oh,
He
wow.
played to about 60 of us, and then the next weekend played to 14,000 people in Vancouver. Uh, but Dan has been doing sort of ticketed Zoom shows, so
Mm-hmm.
very small ticket price. There's a tip option, and then a lot of that money goes to charity afterwards. Um, and they're getting, 500 or 600 people a show, and it's really sort of fascinating to watch that all and pay attention to it. And it's just Dan in his basement, and his kids often interrupt with his guitar, and it's just really well done.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, to wrap up here, why don't you tell us how people can find out more information about your shows, how we can best support you and the things you care about right now? What do you want to say to close out here?
Well, like I said, I don't know. I just don't know where all this is going to go. I used to, a week ago, I thought one thing. This week, I think something else. I thought, if concert venues open up in the same way they shut down, which is, small first and then bigger, that maybe that's a great opportunity for, house concerts to pick up some of the slack and opportunity. But then I thought, oh wow, there's no way in our house you're going to get away from other people. There's no social distancing possible. Not going to happen. We put 75 people in the house for a show. I think, the reach for artists is probably better for their own fan base. I don't know how long that keeps up though. I think what we need to do sort of as music supporters and fans is sort of support the experiments. Even if it's not exactly what you wanted or doesn't exactly go right, it's important to be out there and supporting people. I think Bandcamp has done a wonderful thing, obviously. And I like to tell people that one of the founders of Bandcamp is one of my friends who lives right down the road here in Vermont, because as he said the other day, there's no place he'd rather live. So he's here in Vermont, and it's just the way they do business. They've always done that. We've known, since they started Bandcamp. I had conversations with them on the pre-launch, and they've always been exactly the same way, which is fantastic. So I think that's incredibly, the right way to do things, even better than, buying merch and stuff, which is a great trade-off. Like if you're in a spot where you can give somebody, the cost of your Starbucks instead of buying that. Not that I hope you buy Starbucks anyway, but I think that's the way to do it. It's like if you're fortunate enough to, as I am, to still be employed and have your job, then maybe share some of that for those who are a little more tenuous.
Yeah, that's all great advice, good suggestions. Want to thank you for taking the time. I think house concerts are one of the most special things that exist. I think live music is special to begin with, but house concerts are absolute magic. And so I appreciate what you do, and I really hope that someday I get to come and experience it in person with you.
Yeah, I will say, just to pitch our own thing here, we call it a house concert, but we have a stage in our house. We have a lighting system. We have a professional level PA. We probably have better production values than most clubs you go to. It's an incredibly great sounding room. I see Tim Grady here, who I convinced to make a long I convinced him to make a long drive to come to a show. So we have people who will drive 3 to 4 hours for the right artist to see a show here, because it's worth it. So
Yeah.
I hope we get back there in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I hope so too. And for anybody who's watching, I'm doing these on the hour. I just have 3 more today. The one at 1:00 is with Dom Billett, my favorite drummer, an old friend of mine. And
Who's been here?
Yeah, he's been everywhere, huh? He's worked with a lot of really wonderful acts, and just such a great dude. When I first met him, gosh, it's got to be I'll have to do the math. I've known him for a really long time. So he's at 1 o'clock. Chris Shin will be at 2 o'clock. He's a friend who lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Ron Gallo at 3, who I met at the same time that I met Dom. So it's fun that they both ended up doing this on the same day. So thank you again, Doug. I hope you hang in
Thanks.
there, and I hope to get to talk to you soon.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.